Welcome to the Happiness Contribution Show with me, your happy host, Rosaria Cirillo. On the show, we talk about the various roles happiness plays in our individual lives and in business, and about the benefits that being happy brings. And we share knowledge and practices about what contributes to our happiness. Join me and my guests on this happiness journey together, and get involved by visiting our website at happinesscontribution.com. Welcome to the Happiness Contribution Show. I'm your host, Rosaria Cirillo, a little Italian ball of energy, enthusiasm, and passion, living in the Netherlands for 20 years now with my Dutch husband and 2 boys. I'm a speaker, trainer, and corporate advisor on all things customer experience and happiness, and I'm the author of The Yellow Factor. And in the Happiness Contribution Show, we share knowledge and practices about what contributes to our happiness and how we can contribute to other people's happiness as individuals and as business leaders. And we do that in 3 formats: trailblazer interviews, short insights, and practices. And today, in today's episode, I have the pleasure and honor to be here with Cara Crisler, the founder of Crisler Coaching and Consulting and a human communication specialist. Welcome, Cara.
Here.
You're on mute. Sorry, I didn't unmute you. Welcome, Cara.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So, Cara is an accredited senior level coach, a certified nonviolent communication trainer, and also serves as mediator and facilitator. And originally from the US, she has been living in the Netherlands since 2010, supporting individuals, couples, and teams. And she very much currently enjoys the role of in-house coach for 3 different type of organization, supporting staffs, and all other things that we will go through during this conversation. So without spoiling it further, let's hear directly from Cara, starting with the very first question. Who is Cara as human being?
Yeah, I could answer that question in a few different ways. I think the way I used to answer it was to just kind of go through my CV a bit, and tell you about my history, roles I've played, what I've studied. I'd prefer to say just go to my LinkedIn page if you want to read any of that. I could also talk about the various roles that I have in my life, which I think we'll probably get to some degree. So my favorite current way of answering the question, who am I, is to be more in this very moment. So in this moment, because I change all the time, actually from moment to moment. Right now, I find myself in this podcast, which I'm thrilled about. I really am excited that I was invited to do this with you, Rosaria. I also feel a bit shy. And for me, shy means I really want to connect with you, with people who might be listening, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that or how that's going to work out. And at the same time, I have a lot of trust, mostly because I know you a bit, and I have a lot of trust in the flow that you and I tend to find when we're in a conversation together. And yeah, that matters a lot to me, human connection. So that's who I am right now.
Beautiful. I love it already, because it's like so often we forget to think who we are in this very moment, and we just carry this entire past and history, and sometimes we don't even realize that we change in every moment. So interesting. And it's like, how did you come now to also accept? I think doing this is part of what we would say permission to be human.
Yeah.
And permission to give us permission to just be.
Yeah.
How did you came to that?
Yeah, I like how you put that. I came to it because I spent probably the first, let's say 40 years of my life not giving myself permission to be fully me. Mm-hmm. I was busy with having a mask on most of the time. And that mask was more to fit in, to belong, to kind of please. So I did a lot of pleasing behaviors because I was so driven by, I want to belong here, and I want you to like me, and I want to have a place. And then, but sometime in my, well, this was actually the year I turned 40, I realized this isn't really how I want to live my life anymore. I want to be more me, and I want to have more choice and not be driven by my mask, but be driven by who I am at any given moment. So and I know I might as well just go ahead and mention it, because so much of who I am these days is because of me meeting nonviolent communication. And it's a communication model that brought me so much awareness about myself, and it led me to this, giving me permission to just be me, and trusting that was enough, that is enough.
And it's funny also that you mentioned the 40 years. I'm like starting to think I had the same. I had this breakthrough, breakthrough year. Also,
yeah.
It's like a milestone in our lives that changes.
It's a cliche, and yet it happens.
But then yet I'm like now thinking, I'm trying to make the calculation. One thing that I always do in my podcast is always introduce how I came to meet the person I'm interviewing. And I'm like, you and I met already back in 2013. When I had just delivered my second boy. I was just in the process of leaving Philips, starting as a freelance, being a new mother with 2 kids. So my life was extremely complicated, and I was trying to adjust. And I saw online in the Amsterdam Mamas group this mother circle, and just the positioning of this flow and supporting each other with other mothers, especially international, for me was so attractive that I immediately signed up for your course without even knowing you yet. And then from there on, that's how we got to know each other. I was already familiar with NVC. And now I'm thinking, though, but that must have been before you're 40. So you were already in touch with NVC before you're 40, or am I completely off your age now?
Yes, you're off. Yeah, I'm now 52. So it was in the year 2010 that I met NVC. Yeah. And so that was 3 years before I met you. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you meet NVC then?
Well, it first came to me like 2 decades ago. I did a training. It was a work training, like for team development. And the coach, I was getting to know him a bit. He was giving me a ride home because we live close to each other. And on the way home, he told me about his divorce. And I remember asking him, wow, I'm so surprised. I think of you as like this communication guru, or, someone who really knows a lot about communication. So what tip can you give me? Because I'm struggling in my relationship right now, actually. And his response was, I will not marry again unless my partner to be is willing to go through NVC training with me. And I was like, what's NVC? And he told me. And the next day I went and bought the book. And I read the first chapters, and I asked my husband, my then boyfriend, to read the first chapters. And he did, but he really wasn't that interested in it. And so I lost interest too. I thought, we're gonna get through this together, and I'm not gonna go separate ways or separate down too many separate paths. And then I just forgot about it. But then back in 2010, a friend approached me and said, do you want to take some private NVC lessons with me? It'll be cheaper that way. I think you'll like it. And I was like, oh yeah, NVC. I remember that. And I just was like, yeah, sure. I had just moved to the Netherlands, and I was looking for a job. Actually, I was looking for work, but I was also looking for community. I was looking for everything. So yeah, that was when I started down my NVC path.
And then with Yoram, right? With Yoram Mosenson.
Yeah, Yoram Mosenson. Okay. He was my first NVC trainer. And it was really within the first 10 minutes of meeting him that I was hooked. I loved the way he listened, the way he responded, the way he self-connected and was quite authentic in his expressions. It didn't take long at all before I thought, this is the tool I've been looking for probably my whole life.
And it's funny, the other thing that you mentioned is very interesting, that I very much recognize, is that the story of that we meet our teacher, or we meet our learning the moments that we are ready for it. Because what you just mentioned with NVC is the same that I just described in the past 2 podcast episodes about heart coherence for me. I started hearing heart coherence in 2012, then I came across in 2017, but I just never went deeper up until last year, when then I met the right teacher, and it so much resonated for me, and is also being part of the transformation that I'm on. So it's very interesting that also for you, MVC had those moments where it needs to come to the right moment. And then basically, yeah, we mentioned now Yoram. You and Yoram for me have also been then my inspiration, my teacher, and what maybe not many people actually know, unless they've read the book, because there it's mentioned, is that the entire MVC model has also been the inspiration behind the yellow factor and the sunflowers of happiness, really starting from the needs and identifying what is the needs that we need to fulfill, like also belonging, that really contribute to our happiness. So at this point, what I would also like to ask you is, first, what is your definition of happiness before we go into the contribution? So how do you define happiness?
Well, it's not going to be much different than yours because of what you just shared. Like, I so recognize how it's based on needs. For me, happiness, first of all, something happens in my brain. I immediately think of the word well-being when I hear the word happiness, because for me, well-being is just a bit broader, and it also involves those states of being where I'm not so happy. So I want to actually include all of my feelings in my life and welcome all of them, even the unpleasant ones, because they are also pointing to my needs. So happiness is when a lot of my needs, if not all of my needs, are met in a given moment. Like I'm just, I'm fulfilled. I'm full of life. And across my life, there are many moments where that's not the case. So I take my unpleasant feelings very seriously, because they are just trying to inform me about needs that haven't yet been met, but want to be met. So for me, it's like this balanced approach of welcoming all of those emotions, but also not just focusing too much on any one need. And I love your the flower that you use to kind of show, how full are we in each of our needs, because that changes too from kind of moment to moment. And I don't want any part of that flower to be more filled up than the other, even though that does happen. So I just try to keep a view of how are my needs doing, and to get some good balance between all of them.
And what you mentioned again, there is something that for me was revolutionary about MVC and the thought of Marshall Rosenberg, and that I really stuck with me, and I take it in every training, everywhere I go. I always say, if you remember one thing from me, please let it be that we don't call emotions positive or negative. So I see it everywhere. Even the top psychologists, they still call it positive or negative. And I'm like, why? And I love how Marshall puts it, that it's not about positive or negative, but it's about emotion that we feel when our needs are met, and emotion we feel when our needs are not met. And now also the heart math and heart coherence, they also look at them as regenerative, enriching emotion and devaporating emotion. Because if we feel sad, our needs are not being met, and they're somewhat devaporating, draining emotion. So we have to understand what is bringing me there, and what needs do I need to fulfill in order to move back to a more enriching, regenerative emotion. So for me, that was life-changing.
Me too. Well put.
And then you mentioned now the sunflower. So here it is. This one is not the version with the pollen tank. It's the full version.
Oh yeah.
Here, my question to you is, what is your yellow factor? So what contributes to your happiness inward? And then how do you contribute outward? So what is the way that you contribute to other people's happiness?
Yeah. So for me, it's really hard for me to experience true happiness if I am not experiencing much choice. So I really love choice, and to be in my own power so that I can see choice and make choices that are increasing the chances that my needs are being fulfilled. So it's kind of funny. I mean, like, that answer is also my answer to the second part of your question. I love to contribute to other humans around me, whether it's family, friends, or paying clients, to do the same thing, to see choice, to experience choice, and along with that, to experience some agency or empowerment to be able to act and get their needs better met. So that's very much how I go about my life and my work.
So I would say, so that would be very much autonomy. It's basically autonomy is all about this choice, having space, time, independency, possibility, feeling in control, and having the time and the space to fulfill our needs indeed. So I can totally see it from the inward. I must say, I'm actually surprised that that's for you also the outward one, because somehow I was expecting, or at least that's, if I think of how you contribute to my happiness, there is so much empathy. Like there are so few people
That's part
in
of
my
it.
life that I'm like, it's whenever I have a conversation with you, I always feel listened, understood. There is always this communication and connection until we are both heard. So it's like whenever, I don't know, I can almost say, I don't know that we ever experienced disagreement, but because it almost doesn't feel disagreement. Whenever we are in a conversation, we have to figure something also. Now we most recently collaborated on a project, and then we have to think of the financials, how we're going to split things. But I really always felt it's a conversation. It's that continuous listening and staying in the conversation until we're both met and our needs are both met, which for me it's mind-blowing in a positive way. And I'm like, there's still so few people that seem to be able to stay in that space. Do you recognize that, or how do you see it?
Well, I'm really happy you say this and you share this with me. I feel great about it. And for me, it's absolutely part of what I was saying. So that is how I go about contributing to happiness in the world. I think it's by listening at the needs level. I don't just care about my needs. If I'm the only person who's happy on the planet, then I'm not very happy. I care about other people's needs so much, especially those who are in my immediate life and those I collaborate with, because we're so interconnected. I want you to be fulfilled so that I can be better fulfilled, and vice versa. So yeah, I'm always listening at this level of, and with curiosity, like, what are your needs? I care about your needs. I don't know if I can always meet them, but I do trust that together, if we put both our needs on the table, we're transparent about that, rather vulnerable. It takes vulnerability a lot of the time, but together we will find creativity to get both our needs met. And I just wish that for the world. Yeah.
So, what do you think? So I hear in your voice that one of the key enablers are belief in the interconnectedness and curiosity. Would you agree with that? That is, yeah, because it's like, go ahead.
Well, so curiosity for me is about this staying open, not attached or closed to just my way, but open to that more possibilities. There's yes, I have my needs and I have my ways that I like to do things, and you have your needs, and I want to include them. I want to be super inclusive in all of my interactions, again, because we're so interconnected. If you're happy, then it increases my chances of being happy. And it doesn't mean I want to be a people pleaser. I just want this. I want to include my needs. I want to include your needs. And I communicate with people with my eye on that almost all of the time.
But then it's like, what do you think gets in the way of people that do not get there? Because it's like, so you get there because of the belief in the interconnectedness and the curiosity and staying open, also to different strategy, which is a part of MVC that I'm going to ask you in a moment. Then before we get there is, what gets in the way of people that cannot stay in this space? What do you think it's the issue there?
Yeah, well, I'm going to really just kind of reduce this into a rather simple theory, which is due to our life circumstances, definitely childhood circumstances, the way we're raised, and just life history. I think we tend to have either, and again, I regret this is so black and white sounding, because I don't want to view life that way. But in general, I sort of think some people see the world through the eyes of abundance, and others just, they cannot help, because of life history, they see the world through the eyes of more scarcity. And this has such an impact on whether we're kind of handling life in all our interactions with more fear or more trust. And I try to stay understanding and open and curious about people who seem to be having some fear or scarcity mentality, because there's reasons for that. It doesn't make them bad people. But I try to build trust and figure out what are ways that we can still work together, even though, yeah, you're having a hard time trusting me, or you're not so sure if your needs are going to be met. So yeah, that's where a lot of my empathy comes into play, is to just remember everybody is different. Everybody's coming from different places, and not everybody's going to meet me where I want them to meet me, but I want to work from a basis of trust, and that there are so many possibilities.
And I love it again how you put it, because also for me, one of the answers that I make for myself of what gets in the way is whether we are in a mode of trust or distrust. Yeah. But you added this step in between, which I realize, yeah, but what puts us in a mode of trust or distrust? And sometimes it's not only the relation with the other person, can I really trust this other person? But what you're saying is there's also these lenses. Are we looking through the lenses of abundance or scarcity that impacts whether we are then in an attitude of trust or distrust? So it's
I think so. It's just my theory, and I'm not the first to come up with that, of course. Many people talk about that, but it just makes so much sense to me. Absolutely. And it helps me see the wholeness of people.
Absolutely. So the other elements that we mentioned here is also how there can be different strategies to meet needs. So do you want to give us the quick view of, it's summarizing in a few minutes, what is the core of NVC then, and maybe even the first steps for our listeners?
Yeah, so let's see. To do this really quickly, I give 30-hour courses at different levels. So to summarize this is really a challenge. I'm tempted to show a visual. I don't know if that'll work. Or maybe I'll hold off on that. You can see it on my website. So I want to go back to how NVC helped me see choice. So where before NVC, I would often speak from my story, my assumptions, my interpretations of what was happening around me. And from my thoughts, I had certain ideas about what should be done, certain strategies. And then I would have kind of this demanding energy around, well, because I think this, people should do it this way. With NVC, that outward language, you, became more of a inward language. Like my finger went inward to, okay, I see this, I observe this. That's the first step. Not that it has to be in this order, but I observe this. So I try to keep my interpretations, my story out of it, and keep it neutral. And that has an impact on me. And that impact is, has to do with my feelings, my emotions. So this is what's alive in me when when I see this or this happens. And but we talked about earlier, my emotions are there, not because of you or something you did, but because of my needs. So I go a bit deeper and I look at what are my needs? What's important for me? What is the essence of this situation for me? What do I want to get out of it? What life quality do I want to experience? And once I know my need or set of needs, then I can go into a request. I can consider, that creative space of what action, what thing might I do or might I ask someone else to do so that my needs are better met. And even better, our needs. If I can include other people's needs, then it becomes a dialogue around what can we do to get all of our needs better met? And it's this world of choice. It's expanded my vision of how language can just alter a little bit in the focus of language from you to me, or that perspective to, expand possibilities.
And you have now been bringing also those techniques directly in business. It's like something which, so I came across NVC just in the bridge between my life as in corporate and my life as freelance. And one of the dreams I always had is also to bring it more into the organization, which I did through my emotion and needs and the books. You do one step further, also through bringing those steps and facilitating the communication, something that we actually have done now together in June. I was like super excited. How do you do that regularly with your clients? And can you share with us a bit more how you do it and which impacts do you see it making in the different ways of working?
Well, there's different ways in which I do it. And it's really been kind of a dream for me to develop this subscription service where I offer all of my skills basically to a particular company. So that might look like, and it's all depending on their needs, so I stay in communication, and based on what's needed, I offer a certain service. So that might be one-on-one coaching. to help an individual get unstuck, to see more choices, to figure out ways forward, to work on communication skills, to resolve a conflict. Sometimes it's mediation, where I come in and I'm helping 2 or more people resolve a conflict and come up with new agreements that work. And then the other 2 ways are trainings. And then the final way is facilitation. So I facilitate group, often team decision-making processes to make them as inclusive as possible, to make them needs-based, and to not start with the strategies, but to end with creative strategies that are meeting all needs. So just this week, I was giving some, working with particular teams. And in fact, I'm working with all the teams across the organization and giving them, it's not just a training, it's super interactive, where it's about constructive feedback. And so I want to help them build a system of constructive feedback where they're not holding back, they're not growing resentments, they're not, being stuck with problems day in, day out, but that they're actually learning communication skills that can bring it out and work through them and keep improvements going all the time. And so it's been really fun to ask them, start with a complaint, tell me your complaint, tell me all about it, and then what's the impact, or what is the thing that is happening? Give me the observation. How does this impact you, your feelings? You might decide to share that or not, but go there, because that helps you get in touch with your needs. What's important for you? Now, from your needs, come up with a request, and let's role play this. Tell me, try those steps. Tell me what your request is, and let's role play how that might look in reality. So it's a preparation for them to bring more of their humanity, more honesty into the workplace, and actually just improve so many things: collaboration, workflow, output, harmony. It can just contribute all
And
the way around.
what are you observing? Because we did part of this also together in June, and I loved it, and the team loved it. Yet what we heard is sometimes for them is the first time. It's actually the first time in their lives that they do that approach in such a structured way, and it's mind blowing if that's the case. So what is that you're seeing, and from your side, and how that does contribute also to a better organization, to a better team setup?
Well, you're right. I mean, for some people, it is kind of this mind-blowing, and also, wow, this is asking me to bring quite some vulnerability into the workspace. I'm not used to that. That's not how we do things. So I see it as a slow process, and I really love it when it can kind of start from the top, where the managers are very much initiating this process, and they're modeling it, and because when they do it, when they can actually really go about ownership and bringing these I statements in as opposed to you statements, it just changes this. It can really shift from a fear-based space to a trust-based space. And of course, you have all different kinds of extremes. I don't work with hugely fear-based institutions. Organizations don't bring me in if they're very fear-based. They tend to be very trust-based to begin with. So there's that. Like, I would enjoy the challenge, though, of going into a space, a company where everyone is just terrified in a way, because they're used to this hierarchical top-down approach, punitive, nobody feels safe. And to really it would take time to gradually introduce these concepts, starting with the top, and that slowly things would change for the better. I'm sure of it.
Cool. I guess it fits now, rather than at the very end, to ask you, how can people reach out to you if they're interested in such a program then?
Well, I would first, let me just say, I don't have a really strong social media presence. I just decided social media wasn't bringing me much happiness. Not enough. It brought me some. Yeah, it brought me some. But overall, I really looked at it like, is this sparking enough joy in my life? And it was my clear answer was no. It is draining my energy more than anything, especially how I see communication happening and kind of this polarization. And so I don't do a lot on social media. I am on LinkedIn. I can be reached there. I love pointing people mostly to my website, just as an introduction to me and to get a sense of my services and my about page. But more than anything, I love direct contact. I love telephone. Well, I don't love telephone calls so much. I like them with video, but just to talk on the phone is also not my forte. Email communication works. but let's meet face to face. That's how I really love meeting people.
And we'll add in the show notes your website reference and your name and contact on LinkedIn. And then, of course, you can also get in touch with Cara through me. So also now we are going to have parts of my trainings will include Cara. So I'm super excited about that. So we're now getting into the final rapid fire question. So are you ready? So those were like kind of really 30 seconds to 1 minute answer. The first one is, which book changed your life?
Well, I have to state the obvious here. I mean, no other book changed my life the way Marshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, changed my life. I mean, it just really did. I could name some others, but I'll just stick to that for now.
Makes total sense, actually, so it's perfect. Second one, something that people often get wrong about you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would need to receive more feedback to really be able to answer this question. If I had to guess, though, I think it would be that people might think, especially outside of the US, in Europe, that I smile too much, or that I smile more than I really mean it. And I don't know if that's true or not. I do think I learned as one of my masks to smile a lot, because people like smiles. It's a connection thing. And I'm not ashamed of that, but I do think people might get it wrong about me if they think I'm only doing it and it's not really authentic.
Okay, interesting one. I'm like, okay, I know you saw that's so much authenticity that I can't imagine that's not seeing your smile as authentic. Okay.
Oh, I've heard people say to me, Cara, you're too happy. This can't be real. Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay. Is there a show that you binged, or what is the last show that you binged and loved? Do you do shows, or you all? Okay, which one?
Yeah, the last one. I really don't find the time to binge, but I guess for me, binging is watching a show every night in a row. That is definitely binging for me. And it's Gentleman Jack. It's a show about a 19th century woman. It's based on a true story. I mostly love historical books and shows, and especially when they're quite based on reality. And this woman was lesbian, but had to hide it because it was completely unaccepted. But she finds ways to be her authentic self, and it is so well done and acted and just beautifully produced, I think.
And what's on your nightstand? So this one is really taken from Brené Brown. What's on your nightstand?
Yeah, it could be Brené Brown, as a matter of fact. I've had her on my nightstand many times. Wonderful books. Highly recommend all of them. Right now, what's on my nightstand is The Last White Man, and I've only just started it. But it has to do with a new learning of mine, which has to do with white power and privilege, and how incredibly prevalent and pervasive it is in all of our lives without us really having a strong awareness of that. And I'm really trying to grow my awareness because it has such impact on so many people on the planet. And I want to find my blind spots and figure out different ways of being so that there can be more inclusion and empowerment across the planet.
Mm-hmm. Next one, a snapshot of an ordinary moment in your life that brings true joy.
Yeah, a few come to mind. Most recently, camping under the trees in a forest. I mean, I did a lot of that this summer. Almost nothing makes me happier than to wake up among trees.
Yeah. And I can totally relate to that. It's like with after 2 weeks of camper life, holidays, I'm also like, oh my God, this is like it's fantastic, right? Yeah. And then filling the blanks. To me, happiness contribution means.
Oh, it's hard to come up with something different than I came up with before. It means awareness of needs and willingness to be creative to find ways to fulfill them, mine and others.
And then the next one is, what can we still do as individuals and as leaders to increase the way that we contribute to happiness? And maybe it's, I guess this entire conversation was all about that already, but
yes, I encourage every leader to do what I just said, which is grow awareness of what needs are and to identify them in yourself and in your team members, and focus all of your conversations as much on that as possible. Don't start with strategies, start with needs, and the creative strategies will come. They will follow, but you really want to include every voice. So find different ways of, don't just let the loud talkers be the ones who are heard. Find ways to also connect with those who aren't so vocal, because they have just as many and as important needs as the others.
Yeah. And then the last one, which might now again the same answer, is what is your final golden nugget that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, here I just want to be a little bit more specific. And in fact, I did it earlier in our conversation. Try to speak with the word and instead of but. It automatically brings so much more inclusion into conversations, to not say, yeah, but, which is so common in our language, but to say yes, and. It's like, because the but negates what was just said, and includes it. So that's just one, I think, just a golden nugget. And then the other is learn empathy skills for yourself and for others. And it's a whole quality of listening that we aren't really taught as children or anywhere in our lives. So go out, ask me, learn empathy skills, because it is a life-changing skill for yourself and for all your relationships.
Cool. Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. So that was all from my question. Anything else you would like to say before we close it off? Or?
Oh, I just feel a lot of gratitude and appreciation towards you, Rosaria, for what you do, what you bring to the world, and the energy with which you bring it. You inspire me so much. And yeah, just keep on doing what you do.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Cara, for being with us today. This was all for today's episode. So recapping, I'm Rosaria, and I'm committed to bring more happiness into the world, one customer and one employee at a time, empowering companies to achieve growth, productivity, and profits by cultivating happiness. So if I can be of any support now, also with Cara, to you and to your company with my advisory, keynotes, sessions, training programs, just be in touch. We would love to hear from you. In the meantime, keep following our podcast, taking care of your well-being and connecting and radiating from the heart. Thank you all, and until the very next episode. This was the Happiness Contribution Show, available on YouTube as webcast and on your favorite channels as podcast. If you like the show, we would appreciate if you share it with one person that may benefit from it too. Subscribe to our channel and tune in for the next episode. You can find all the episodes and discover more happiness contribution tips on our website, happinesscontribution.com. That's all for today. Stay happy and healthy, and nurture happiness contribution.